My name is Caitlin Sittig, and I am a Master's of Arts in Teaching graduate student at Morningside College. I am also a Head Start early childhood teacher. I studied the effects the picture word inductive model instructional strategy had on receptive and expressive language skills in Head Start early childhood students. 2.3 to 19% of children ages 2 to 7 are diagnosed with language delays. Children that do not outgrow their language delays have a 50% higher chance they will have academic problems in school and adulthood. As a Head Start early childhood teacher, I have more students entering each year with delayed language skills. Students do not have large vocabularies to express their needs and wants and struggle to understand what is being told to them. Therefore, I felt it was important to look at students' language development and language skills. Because language learning happens during the early childhood years, preschool and primary school teachers must know how to support children's receptive and expressive language development and provide language-rich environments. Teachers support language development when they interact one-on-one with children, foster peer interactions, and support children to become conversation partners. Teachers must provide ongoing opportunities for children to learn language through communicating with peers and adults. First, I must define the difference between receptive and expressive language to help you better understand. Receptive language is defined as the ability to understand information. Receptive language includes words and meaning of what others say and read. Children learn to respond to spoken language as they learn to recognize their name, identify familiar voices, and follow directions. Expressive language is defined as spoken language or how one communicates their needs. Expressive language includes spoken words, gestures, and facial expressions. Next, I would like to introduce you to a couple of learning strategies that research has shown to enhance language development. Responsivity education trains adults to be conversationally responsive partners with children. Adults who are conversationally responsive encourage reciprocal interactions that support the child's active participation in a conversation. Adults promote reciprocity in exchanges in different ways. They promote responsivity when they smile and maintain eye contact, constantly respond to children's communication efforts, and expand their responses. Responsivity is also promoted by adults cueing the child to take another turn, showing a slow pace as to not dominate, and asking open-ended questions. Cabell et al. 2011 conducted a study to determine the following. Does preschool teachers' participation in responsivity education increase the language and literacy skills of children in their classroom? And to what extent are the effects of responsivity education on children's language skills moderated by their entry-level language skills? 49 teachers participated in the study and were assigned to a responsivity education intervention or a business-as-usual control group. 330 students who were aged 3 years, 4 months participated in the study. During the treatment period, teachers focused on the following strategies: following the child's lead, taking turns together, providing information, encouraging interactions in group situations, letting language lead the way to literacy, and fostering peer interactions. Cabell et al. Noted that all teachers using responsivity education strategies saw gains in their children's language skills. Grammar or sentence structure scores increased from a mean of 10.78 with a standard deviation of 4.82 in the fall to a mean of 13.55 with a standard deviation of 4.87 in the spring. Grammar or word structure increased from a mean of 9.86 with a standard deviation of 5.19 in the fall to a mean of 13.02 with a standard deviation of 5.49 in the spring. Receptive vocabulary skills went from a mean of 43.42, standard deviation 19.35 in the fall, to the mean of 54.39, standard deviation of 19.75 in the spring, and expressive vocabulary scores increased from a mean of 14.63, standard deviation of 7.94 in the fall, to a mean of 19.24, standard deviation 8.53 in the spring. Inductive learning is another strategy used to build language development and is used to deepen students' content knowledge, build their inference, and evidence gathering skills. In an inductive learning lesson, students examine, group, and label specific information to find patterns. Students also use the content groupings to develop hypotheses about the content to be learned. As learning takes place, students collect evidence to refine their hypothesis. The picture word inductive model, or PWIM, is an inductive learning strategy used to teach beginning reading and writing skills and concepts in science and social studies. The PWIM model is a structured cycle of phases that typically last 2 to 6 weeks, but may vary based on students' reading levels and content knowledge. A PWIM cycle starts with a picture whose contents, both the central elements and details, include many things that the students can describe using their current listening and speaking language skills. Students study the picture and shake out words from the picture by identifying things they see in the picture. The second phase involves providing students with their own set of word cards, and students practice reading the words. During the next phase, students sort their words in terms of phonetic, structural, and content properties and explain why they put a particular set of words together. During the last phase of the PWIM cycle, students use their words to create sentences and titles for the picture used during the beginning phase. Research by Schwarzenegger, 2001, investigated the effectiveness of PWIM and found the strategy enhances students' vocabulary acquisition. 14 students participated in a 4-week PWIM intervention, while 21 students received typical instruction acting as a control group. Students' vocabulary was assessed using the Peabody Picture Vocabulary Test, consisting of 37 vocabulary terms. The mean score during the pretest was 25.43 terms correct. Post-test mean scores was 26.52 terms correct. The Scholastic Reading Inventory, or SRI, was used to measure students' comprehension skills. The pre-test mean Lexile score for the SRI was 308.6, while the post-test mean Lexile score was 478.73. Schwarzenegger concluded that PWIM positively affects students' vocabulary acquisition. Schwarzenegger also concluded students' reading comprehension increased with vocabulary instruction. As we just saw, previous research has shown that the picture word inductive model has enhanced students' vocabulary acquisition and increased elementary students' comprehension skills. However, there is a gap in research to show whether PWIM increases preschool students' receptive and expressive language skills. The purpose of this study was to determine the effects the picture word inductive model would have on receptive and expressive language skills of Head Start students. The results of this study can be used to help teachers make instructional decisions about language instruction. In the education field, there's a lot of work that people consider good, but this would provide evidence of a successful intervention for people to refer to. A quasi-experimental pre-test, post-test, or AB, single subject design was used throughout this study, resulting in different baselines amongst each participant. An AB-AB research design was not appropriate for this study as receptive and expressive skills cannot be untaught after the B phase. Students could have potentially used the receptive and expressive skills they learned during the phase B and phase A, resulting in unreliable data. The participants in the study came from a 3- and 4-year-old Head Start classroom of 16 students. The study consisted of 9 participants, all of whom were 4 years old on or before September 15th of the current school year. The remaining 7 students in the classroom did not participate in the study because 3 students enrolled after the study started. 3 received educational services at another school, and 1 student spoke little to no English at the beginning of the study. Of these 9 students, 6 were boys and 3 were girls. 5 of the students were African American, 3 were Caucasian, and 1 was Hispanic. I began the study by collecting and analyzing pre-treatment data using the Development Assessment for Young Children 2, or DAYC2 assessment. The treatment phase began with a poster picture mounted on white paper on a bulletin board. Students would use a finger pointer and walk up to the picture, point to something in the picture, and say what it was. For example, looking at this picture, a student might walk up to the woman in this picture and say, "Teacher." As a facilitator, I used a bold marker and drew a line away from the object in the picture and wrote the word on the white paper. I would say the word while writing it, for example, "teacher," ask the students to say the word, and then repeat the word. After students were finished identifying new objects, the words from the poster were written on index cards. Students used the word cards to sort the words by beginning sound or letters, word patterns, and object categories. The poem cycle took 2 weeks, and 6 cycles of poem were completed during the treatment phase. Once the treatment phase was completed, I assessed students using the DAYC2 cognitive domain to collect post-treatment data. Data was analyzed using dependent sample t-tests to determine if participants' scores increased, stayed the same, or decreased during the phase B due to the treatment of PWIM. I hypothesized the PWIM teaching strategy would increase participants' receptive language and expressive language skills. The data supported the hypothesis. Looking at Table 1, you can see the dependent sample t-test suggested a significant difference between receptive language pre-test scores and post-test scores with a p-value of greater than 0.01. The dependent sample t-test also suggests significant difference between expressive language pre-test and post-test scores with a p-value of greater than 0.01 also. Looking at Figure 1 on the left, we see the datum shows that students at the end of the study had higher receptive language skills with a mean score of 80.22 compared to the beginning of the study mean score of 77.33. Figure 2 on the right shows that at the end of the study, students had higher expressive language skills with a mean score of 85.78 compared to a mean score of 83.67 at the beginning of the study. These results provided evidence that the treatment of adding the PWIM instructional teaching strategy to a student's daily instruction had an effect on the student's receptive and expressive language skills, supporting my hypothesis. Implications can be drawn from the results. First, this research study provides evidence to teachers how important the PWIM instructional strategy is on having a positive impact on language development. This study also impacts teachers by providing a method to assess and study whether the methods they are using currently are statistically beneficial to student learning. Second, students can benefit from the PWIM instructional strategy through language development. By building strong language development, students are less likely to be diagnosed with language and learning delays. Strong language development decreases the need for specialized speech and language services. One limitation of this research study was the small sample size of 9 participants. With a small sample, it could have been difficult to achieve statistically significant results. According to Patton 2005, increasing sample size increases precision. Because I used participants from my own classroom and the number of constant participants throughout the study was limited, increasing a sample size was not an option. Future research would increase the sample size. A second limitation in this research was the assessment instrument used. The Development Assessment of Young Children 2 requires students to complete tasks that focus on specific vocabulary. For example, when testing students' receptive language, they are tested on the difference between big and little by asking them to throw the big ball. If the PWIM cycle does not incorporate the vocabulary word big, and the student does not have the knowledge of the word at the beginning and the end of the study, their score would never increase. Further research would include an assessment tool that accurately measures students' language skills at the beginning of the study and the language they acquire throughout the study. A third limitation in this research comes from external influences such as parental involvement and access to language outside of school. According to the Harvard Family Research Project, parental involvement is associated with higher student achievement. They found that students' success was higher in standardized test scores, grades, and teacher ratings. Children that came from families where parents are involved by reading books to their children, communicate with their children, and hold conversations with their children have increased access to language. Further research would examine the effects parental involvement have on language development. A fourth limitation of the study comes from the quasi-experimental pre-test, post-test research design. A true experimental design with random assessment to experimental and control groups is the most accurate design to explore cause and effect relationships, as random assignment has no bias. However, it was not possible for me to assign participants at random because the experimental group consisted of students in my classroom. Continued research is needed to strengthen and validate the findings of this study. Future research should include large sample size that randomly assigns participants to experimental and control groups. Researchers should also examine the effects parental involvement has on language development. Furthermore, researchers should implement the use of different research-based language instructional strategies to determine if PWIM is beneficial to student progress and language development.